Hello and welcome to the first episode back for the Hooligan Report for season 2016-17. I'm your host as always, SM, and I've got with me Cruyff.
Good morning.
I've also got Jd2010.
Hey.
And I've also got Tradespert.
Morning.
Tradespert, I'll start with you just quickly because I don't think we've had a toffee on the podcast before. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on Everton's last few seasons, I guess. You had Martinez as manager, finished fifth, then flirted with relegation a little bit while you played in the Europa League, and now you've appointed Koeman. So how have you found it all?
It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, to say it in a nutshell. First season was unbelievable. It was the first time I've probably, in my time following Everton, I've ever seen us play attacking football, because under Moyes that wasn't always his number one priority. So it was unreal, in all honesty. It was the best season I've actually ever seen from an Everton team in my probably young time of following Everton. Pardon me. And then it was just a fall since then. I think our tactics got found out. A lot of players lost trust and respect for Martinez, and we were just a downward spiral ever since then. And our last two seasons were nothing short of terrible from an Everton fan's perspective. And hopefully now with Ronald Koeman in charge, we can charge back up the table and get back to our best.
Sounds good. We'll go into more detail on Everton in a bit, but we'll start with Cruyff and we'll chat about Arsenal. And I mean, look, it's the same questions every year to you, isn't it? You've signed Shaqiri, Xhaka, his teammate, for 30 million, and I think Holding from Bolton for £2 million. But apart from that, not too many signings. So how are you feeling heading into the season, and do you think you need to make a few more signings?
I think we only sign the right quality player for the right amount of money, and I think when that player becomes available, we will make the move. In all seriousness, it is same old shit, different season, really. We need more players. We don't have enough. We need more depth. We don't have enough. We don't have good enough forwards to win the league. We need a stronger spine. We need better depth at right wing. It's just the same old as we've seen the past few seasons, and Wenger's continued in his same ways.
What did you
as everyone is all too familiar with.
What did you make of the Vardy bid and how close it came to being accepted and going through?
I thought it showed good ambition. I mean, I think quite a few of the fans on the board got excited, but and it was good to show. Good to see the many. He moved to us, and then we sort of had a winning.
Sorry, did you want to repeat that? I think you dropped out a bit.
Yeah, sorry. No, it was good to see the club show some ambition and sign Vardy, and try and sign Vardy, but unfortunately the bid was rejected, and Vardy rejected Arsenal too. But the club have sort of sat on their hands since, and that's been that, and it's quite disappointing. But that's what happened, and I mean we've been linked with Lacazette, Morata, but nothing's been done about it.
Did anyone else have any questions about Arsenal they wanted to ask?
Well, I'll chip in. Do you actually think that there's a top-class striker out there that Arsenal can now sign? I looked through the options, and I honestly, there's Lacazette, or I'm not even sure how you pronounce it, but Icardi, but is there some serious top-class proper striker out there that Arsenal can actually sign that can seriously make you guys title contenders?
But I would not back the card if they wanted to join the club and if the club made steps to signing them. But in terms of top shelf talent, you've got Aguero, Ibrahimovic, Messi, Neymar, Suarez, three of all of which are at the same club. two of which play at rival clubs in England. So it's really there's a lack of talent, I guess, available on the market at the moment in terms of a top shelf striker.
Yeah, that's true. It's just sort of because, I don't know, last year and in years previous, you almost hear like Lewandowski's name. Benzema was the rumour that never left, and then it just seems to have, the quality of the target seems to have dropped down.
I think as well that it's the lack of striker available. If you're not like that big top club, your Madrid, your Munich, or your Barcelona, and to an extent City and United, you're really at a disadvantage, I'd say, to sign an elite striker.
I mean, he would cost an arm and a leg, but someone like Aubameyang would almost be a good target because he strikes me as someone who plays. He's got a similar sort of game style to Giroud, I would think, in the sense that they're both big men. So he'd be like a massive upgrade on Giroud, really. But I just don't know if you'd fork out the 70 million that they're asking for him.
Oh, a lot. Yeah, I think P is more of a bullet forward sort of thing. I'm not sure if he's a target man, but it's something you'd take. But I don't think he'd leave Dortmund for Arsenal personally.
No, especially after this summer, they've recruited really well. So
yeah, someone I'd throw all money at is Antoine Griezmann. But again, why would you leave Atletico in the place they're in now and come to Arsenal?
Yeah.
Do you think this will be
probably true?
Yeah. Do you think this will be Wenger's last season?
Oh, I think his contract's up at the end of this season, so I'd say most definitely.
And then I guess, will you finish above Spurs, or do you have a chance of winning the league? I mean, I think last season you were more confident because of the signing of Cech, but this season obviously you haven't made as many key signings.
We won't win the league, but I still think we'll finish above Spurs. I'm not being was arguing or anything. It's just we don't have enough quality league, and sort of the wheels fell off in those last few games, and we didn't deserve that second place by any stretch. But I just think we always find a way to finish in that top four. So I think it'll be the same again this season.
Well, then I guess you'll be hoping Spurs finish second. We'll move on to talk about Spurs now. JD, I guess I'll ask you this. You've made a couple of decent signings in Wanyama and Jansen, and they fill a few of the needs for depth that you had. Do you think that you need a few more key signings to really challenge for the title, or do you think you're pretty much set now?
I don't think the first 11 will change all that much. So, anyone else that comes in will just be depth and young players. So yeah, I don't know. I think the whole philosophy that Pochettino has is just growth from within the squad. Turning guys like Dembele and Lamela around to be stars of the team. So I think it'll be more of the same, really. A couple of youth guys come through and take squad spots and stuff like that. So I doubt we'll make too many. There's a couple of young guys that are being linked. But again, I think his name's Ante Koric from Zagreb. I don't think he'll, there won't be pressure on him to take Eriksen's spot. It'll be more like, Ali's season last year where he starts on the bench, and if he makes it, he makes it. If not, he might do like Lamela, might take 3 years. So, yeah, I'm not expecting a whole heap between now and the end of the window. Maybe 2 or 3 young guys, but yeah, nothing major.
If Spurs don't finish in the top 4, do you think that harms the chances of players coming and potentially holding on to players that are currently at the club, such as Eriksen, Kane, Ali, that sort of thing?
Not so much on players coming, because we're not signing anyone that's demanding, Champions League football. Wanyama's a good player, but he's a target that even Liverpool could have signed. So, yeah. And in terms of keeping the players, I guess it's Eriksen's the main worry if we didn't make it. But apart from that, yeah, I think they're kind of investing into it quite a bit with young English players. And Lloris is talking pretty heavily on and signed new contracts based on Pochettino and, what he's trying to build there. So, yeah, I don't see it being a massive problem. Maybe losing Eriksen would be the one that would happen. But again, I think it depends on how we go in not qualifying. Like if it's a cup win and a good performance in the Champions League, I still think Pochettino has that relationship with the players that he can convince him to stay on for another year and have a crack again.
Do you think, though, that with Pochettino he does need to change some of his techniques? I mean, Cruyff was sort of saying that as the season wore on, the wheels seemed to come off a bit for Spurs, and the players did seem to get quite tired towards the end of the season. And you had that blowout against Newcastle, which was obviously pretty damaging in terms of where you finished.
Yeah, well, the thing you got to look at it, and it's, is it the fitness or is it, we had Dembele cop that 6-game ban, and the week before Ali copped a 3-game ban. So you're losing two of the first 11 there, not through injury, and then the guys that come in are Ryan Mason and Tom Carroll, Heung-Min Son. So it's not, especially Dembele. He's the most important player we have.
Just back on Pochettino, sorry. As SM mentioned, do you think the way you guys performed against Chelsea in terms of like really dirty and all that, do you think that was something that Pochettino instructed them to do, or the players lost their cool and he couldn't control them, or do you think that's an indictment on him?
No, I think it's been all season. We were the most carded team in the league. We committed the most fouls in the league. He's definitely changed the way I think teams look at us. Lamella's technically the most dirty player in the league. Dyer, before he gets a yellow, he'll go through guys and make a statement. So I think he's definitely, that game it erupted. But I'd been seeing it when we were playing sides like Bournemouth. You'd have, Matt Ritchie first few minutes of a game and get the shit kicked out of him, really. So it's just all about changing that perception of Tottenham. And I think there was an interview with Eric Dyer after we smashed City, where he just said, they're really pissed off by the perception of weakness in the squad, and they're going to, really, that's what they're really working towards fixing. That was before, top four was or Leicester was in the sights at all. So, yeah, I don't think that'll continue on. And in terms of, the training methods and stuff, I think it's actually the beginning of the season that we copped the worst of it. He's, does double sessions, triple sessions once a season, still going. And we actually started quite slow. So whether or not I'd hope he changes that end of it more than, the back end of the season. I'm a bit sceptical on, because, with Dembele out, the next in line for his role would be Ali to move back into it. And then with him out, it was, okay, well, we now need to bring Chadley in, who's, mid-table, and we now need to bring Mason in. The two of them together, for two of the most important player roles in that team. It's just, it makes us mid-table, really, and it showed against Southampton. Well, and then obviously against Newcastle.
It'll be interesting to see if Pochettino does change that technique, particularly with the start of the season, as you say, because, and Tradespert, you'd know this more than most, that with Martinez, that sometimes managers really do get stuck in their ways and don't really see issues even when they're common sense. And I guess that's as a question to everyone, because then also it would apply to Cruyff with Wenger making very minimal signings. Does there not come a point with a manager where conventional wisdom or logic or common sense sort of overrides what their philosophy tends to be, or do they just sort of stick in their ways?
Of course it does, but they don't necessarily think that they should change their ways. As you said, they're stuck in their ways, and
but surely
they believe their way is the right way, and they're not good. If they do it another way, it shows they've been proven wrong, and they have to swallow a whole heap of pride. And Arsene Wenger especially does not like to admit he is wrong or has done something wrong, or etc. etc.
Surely,
Yeah, I think all managers.
Sorry, you go.
All managers are quite stubborn in their ways, really. Yeah, I don't see Pochettino changing his hard training at all, really, because, and you can kind of say, rightly so, like, would you rather 38 games of mediocrity or, go on a 20-25 game patch of really good football and maybe, drop for the first 4 or 5? Not completely drop, but drop in performance. I guess that's his way of thinking about training. We could either do what we did the season before, where we were a bit softer on the players and be average, or there was that period, I think, between about November through to March, where we were playing as good a football as anyone, and I think his training, or he'd like to think that his training methods would be the cause of that. So yeah,
from a manager's point of view, sorry
Yeah.
to butt in, but from a manager's point of view as well, if you go and change your tactics or change your style and all that every single time that the media or the fans jump on your back, you'll be playing a different tactic every single week.
Oh, sure.
So I think there has to be
Definitely.
I think there has to be points. I don't think you can rush into significant changes. Pre-season's a time where it needs to be done, and from a Spurs perspective, if fitness was the issue, which in all honesty I still question whether it was, if fitness was the issue, then sit down with the fitness staff, the physios, whoever, and then sort it out pre-season. Because if you start trying to mess around with everything in the middle of the season, I think that's just where the wheels fall off a little bit too much. You just got to be smart.
I think as well, tactically, if you change your thing too much, you need to bring in different players for that. So sort of like we'll buy wingers to play like a 4-2-3-1 sort of thing, but we won't buy someone like a wing back where like Guardiola relies on wing backs or Conte rather relies on wing backs sort of thing. So if you chop and change too much, you need a squad full of 40 or 50 players to cover each position sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think the players wouldn't buy into, if they don't have a set style or set way.
Yeah.
There's not going to be that buy-in. But then, like you're saying, though, Martinez was playing, suicidal kind of stuff out of the back all the time. There's got to be a point where you admit that it's not working.
Yeah. Well, that went on for 2 years.
Yeah. See, like 2 years,
and that's my point. Yeah,
hampered results.
If it's gone on for 2 years, surely, and it's cost him his job. Surely, and I mean, it's not as if he didn't have warning signs in his previous job at Wigan, where he had similar issues. But surely he gets to a point where he thinks, well, hang on, I've actually lost my job over this issue. Clearly, it's something I need to address.
Well, he's just got the job at Belgium, so...
Yeah. I think with him, though, he might not actually know any other way as well. Like, that's what it appeared to be. Like, he actually doesn't know how to teach a team to defend.
But
like,
if the reports are true that at training he didn't even practice he didn't practice defending
set
corners
pieces.
Or set pieces?
Yeah,
I mean, things like
any
that.
set pieces at all.
Things like that. That's
Yeah.
not
That's
exactly.
ridiculous.
That's not exactly. Oh, I don't know how to teach this defender how to defend. That's just not even trying to, or hiring a defensive coach, or even trying to do anything.
Yeah, we basically went the season without a goalkeeping coach as well. One of the first that Koeman brought in, so... managers can be so stubborn.
Yeah. We'll move on then and cover Crystal Palace, and I guess I can address these questions to the group. Just a quick sort of discussion about them, but they obviously made the FA Cup final last season with Pardew, but had quite a good start to the season, up around 5th place, sort of around the same sort of form as West Ham, Southampton, those sorts of sides, but then had a complete and utter drop-off in the second half of the season. So I guess the main question is where we see them finishing, because Pardew has that sort of reputation of doing quite well initially, but then his side sort of dropping quite sharply, dropping quite away.
Yeah, he's a real confidence manager. He plays off of confidence. So when his teams are good, they're good, but when these teams are crap, they're crap. So
yeah, I think they could be really anywhere. They could be.
I'd say between 11th and 15th.
They could be from 5th to 19th for me, I reckon. Especially if they get Benteke.
Well, that's the big one. Do we think they'll get him?
I think so eventually.
I think they will. Yeah.
Yeah, Liverpool will be stupid to keep him. but yeah, that's the thing. They could go and beat anyone. And they've added Townsend now with Zaha and Balassi, and then you've got him in the middle. Like he's up front. But at the same time, they could easily go 3 months without a win. So it just depends on Pardew. He is very hot and cold. But yeah, I don't see. It'd be definitely an exciting team to support because you just never know what's going to happen next.
Obviously,
I also look at.
Yeah, sorry.
I look at they've actually got a good core. Like their top 6 or so is really solid. If Pardew can build around that, I rate them as a potential top team.
Yeah,
top 10 team myself this season.
They've got a good. Who's their keeper? Hennessy.
Yeah,
No,
but
they've got Mandanda now.
Yeah.
Oh, Mandanda, and they've got Kabai.
Yeah.
Well, Yedinak's going apparently.
Scott Dan's pretty solid too.
Yeah,
Scott
he had a good season.
They've signed Tompkins and Townsend as well.
So they've sort of ticked off a lot of bases with their recruitment, I feel. It's strengthened different lines.
You kind of get the sense that at the moment, nobody. They got Wickham.
Well, it was funny because
It's not bad.
It was funny though because last season they went in with 6 forwards or something, and I think
they're all championship quality. Really.
Yeah, they've released
Even
Adebayor and Shamak, and they've sold Gale to Newcastle for 10 million. So they're trying to cut a few of the quality. Yeah, I'm sure he'll move on as well this season.
Yeah, so it's just like if they can just get Benteke as well, but you'd think you look at Pardew when things aren't going well. It'd be a shit place to be around. You could just tell he'd be a real annoying bad manager when things are going badly. Because there's no excuse for that team to go 3 months without a win.
Given his history with the club as a player and now as a manager, do we see him sort of getting a bit more leeway if they do go through one of those leaner periods?
Potentially, but then you think as well that the board would expect more from a former player trying to get the club to get up and about rather than go winless for 3 months sort of thing.
They've got some pretty high ambitions, I think, that the board there, and they got some money behind them. So, if relegation's on the cards, I don't think they'll hesitate in sacking him if it means they can get someone good in.
He'd be significantly higher paid than any manager they've ever had, and they had to do a bit to get him because.
He had
he signed like he had a huge contract at Newcastle, so
they're backing him in to get them to Europe eventually. For now, but whether or not the results go bad, the board won't really care. The money that's in the Premier League, if you need to sack and pay someone out, you just got to do it.
And then, of course, there's the FA Cup final curse, which is quite funny that the previous 3 FA Cup finals, Wigan, Man City, Hull Arsenal, and then Aston Villa Arsenal, have all seen one of the sides relegated the following season, or that season in Wigan's case. Do we see that?
That's funny, actually.
It's quite funny that it's happened 3 years in a row now. Do we see there? Obviously, we're just talking about Palace getting relegated, but it's a real possibility that it could become 4.
Well, if Mourinho stuffs up that badly, United might go down.
It would have been quite funny if that happens, but yeah. I guess that's all we're going to talk about for Palace. I caught up with DBAH0 a little bit earlier to talk West Ham and a couple of other sides, so you can have a listen to that now. I'm joined now by DBAH0. How are you, mate?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks, SM.
So I guess we haven't really had a West Ham supporter on before, so I wanted to ask you how you found West Ham's rise to being able to compete with some of the bigger clubs.
Look, being a West Ham fan is never boring, put it that way. So I've been following the club for about 10, 15 years, and We don't do safe mid-table. That's why Sam Allardyce got sacked, because we finished 12th and 13th every season under him, and the fans found it pretty boring. So, we've been through relegation, promotion. So usually there's a bit of everything being a West Ham supporter. But it seems now sort of, with the club moving to the Olympic Stadium, getting some good new players in, it seems like it's a team on the rise. So it's a good time to be a West Ham fan.
Yeah, so I guess that was a good place to start with asking you about that move to the Olympic Stadium, and what does that mean for the club? It's sort of symbolic of this new era, I suppose.
Absolutely. So, the stadium, I think, holds about 54,000 capacity at the moment, so that's going to be upgraded to about 60,000. We've got over 50,000 season ticket holders now, which, we broke our attendance record in our history the other night in our Europa Cup game against some Slovenian mob. 53,000 rock up on a Thursday night for a third round Europa qualifier. So I think that pretty much tells you sort of, the support around the club at the moment and what this move means.
Do you have any sort of concerns then that, or is there any sort of issues that if you did potentially get relegated, having a stadium like that could cause issues, or is it not really too expensive to maintain?
Well, I think we're paying probably about £2 or £3 million a season in rent. So, we got a pretty good deal when it was all said and done. I know, like, Levy and Spurs, and there's been a lot of legal suits and everything that's been going on with the whole, who was going to end up getting the Olympic Stadium over the past few years. So, the season we were in the Championship, we were still getting 32,000 people rocking up to the stadium. So it's a bit like Newcastle going down to the Championship. Yeah. They're still going to get their 45,000 or so to St James's Park every week. So.
Yeah, I did seem to find it interesting. You and Newcastle are sort of quite similar, or you followed similar paths the last maybe 6 or 7 years, where I think Newcastle went down in 08-09, you guys went down a few years later, and both bounced back up straight away. And then now, well, Newcastle had a period of looking pretty good, and you guys are now looking pretty good as well. On the player front, with Dimitri Payet obviously being the talk of everyone at the moment, especially after the Euros, how do you see him backing up this season after last season's incredible form?
Well, hopefully he plays as good as he did last season, because he's so important to us. And when he missed about 3 months last season, I think it was after a James McCarthy tackle against Everton, I think we didn't win a game for about 7 or 8 games. We had a lot of 0-0 draws, and that sort of brought us back into the pack a bit. So he's really important in terms of creating chances, for our other players. So, I'll be hoping for, 10 goals, 15 assists again from him this season. He's obviously had a very good Euros as well, at least the first couple of games. So, very happy that we've managed to keep a hold of him by the looks of it. So I was worried that the likes of Real Madrid were going to put in a bid for him, but looks like they're going to go after Sissoko from Newcastle instead, which is quite hilarious.
And as you've just mentioned, obviously last season you did become a bit over-reliant on him at times. Has there been any sort of moves in the transfer market to sign anyone who could perhaps provide some depth in that area? I know you've signed Feghouli on a free, and he's looked quite promising, I think. Are there any other sort of moves in the offing that might give you some more depth in that respect?
Yeah, so we've got Feghouli, who's coming from Valencia on a free transfer, so he'll be playing on the right wing for us most likely, probably rotating maybe with Mikel Antonio. So we'll have him on the right wing. We've got Gokhan Toure, who probably playing the left wing. So he's played under Bilic at Besiktas before, and Bilic rates him really highly. So we've got him on a 1-year loan deal, probably similar to the Lanzini deal that we had last season, one of those prove-it deals. So hopefully he settles in. He used to play for Chelsea back in the day, so he knows a bit about the the London lifestyle and all that. So we've got those two. It looks like we're going to be signing Andre Ayew from Swansea. So that's going to be confirmed on Sunday by the looks of it, because Swansea have ended up with Llorente now. So Ayew will probably play as an attacking midfielder and a winger for us. So he's pretty versatile. So, we've got those 3 coming in. So, we should be pretty well stocked when it comes to attacking midfielders, wingers.
So you're obviously looking pretty good then. Do you see West Ham pushing up and perhaps challenging for a top 4 position, or do you think that's probably beyond you this season?
No, look, I think if all goes well, we were right there in the top 4 until basically the third game of last season when we lost to Swansea, 4-1 at home. So I think a lot's going to depend on the Europa League and how we manage to go, juggling, having those midweek fixtures as well. So, look at Everton from a couple of seasons ago when they came 5th under Roberto Martinez in their first season, and then, they really dropped off after that. So it's really important to have a deep squad and be able to rotate your players. So I think, I'd be hoping for top 6 this season, right about where we finished last season. I think if all goes well, and if we bring in, a Carlos Bacca as a striker and he scores 20 goals this season, I think top 4 is still possible for us.
Yeah, and just on that, there's obviously been a lot of different stories about your approaches for strikers over the summer, and obviously struggling to land one. What can you kind of pinpoint as the reason why you've had such a struggle landing one of those bigger strikers?
So it comes down to David Sullivan coming out in the press and saying, I want to spend 20 to 30 million pounds on a striker. So, all the other teams see that and say, oh, I'm going to charge an extra $5-10 million for, my best strikers now, just because, the West Ham chairman has said he's willing to pay that much for one. So, we're after Batshuayi and Lacazette mainly. Yeah. For a couple of months when the season finished. Batshuayi said he wanted European football, but he ended up going to Chelsea instead for the money. So,
yeah,
there goes that. And Lacazette, well, the Lyon president's been a bit of a wanker, really. He's, he said he would take 25 million and then 30 million and then 35 million, and he's basically just rejected all bids for him. So, Arsenal might end up getting Lacazette for about 50 million quid or so last day of the transfer window. Potentially, I could see that. So, Bacca seems to be our number 1 target now, and he wants Champions League football, but PSG have filled their non-EU quota, and so have Sevilla. So he can't go to either of those teams. And I think Atletico Madrid have signed Gamero from Sevilla as well, so he can't go there. So it's really much us or Napoli, because Napoli have obviously sold Higuain to Juventus now. So, Napoli are getting linked with him and Icardi from Inter Milan. So his wife's basically pulling the strings on a move there by the sounds of it. But so I think if Napoli end up getting Icardi, I think Bacca's basically got no other option than to join us, because Milan need to sell him to raise some cash for their own transfer dealings by the sounds of it.
We'll move on then to talk about Swansea, who you mentioned obviously with the link with Andre Ayew, and it's obviously a bit concerning for their supporters. I mean, if they've signed Llorente as a replacement for Ayew, that's at least a positive bit of news, but Gomez going out on loan back to France, and they seem to be struggling to sort of bring in that many players to help them progress. How do you see their season panning out?
Yeah, they're a bit of a talking point at the moment, Swansea, and I'll give a shout out to Rough Edges on the Big Footy boards as well. He had quite a rant the other day about their lack of transfers. So it was one of the better ones I've seen for a while. No, look, I think they've been in the Premier League for a while now, but I think people think, this might actually be the season that they could actually drop down. I think Ashley Williams is so important for him, and he's obviously getting linked with a move to Everton. So, he's been the heart and soul of that team for a good 4 or 5 years now. And if he went, I think they would really struggle to stay up. I think it's so important for them to keep him. So we'll see what happens with that. I think Everton are putting a second bid for him now, about £15 million or so. So it'll be interesting to see whether that goes through or not. But they've managed to keep Sigurdsson. He's signed a new 4-year deal, but so he's sticking around. But as you said, they've lost Gomez, they've lost Pelosi as well, and they've lost Eder, who was the hero of the Euro.
Yeah.
So, do nothing for Swansea all season and then end up winning the Euros. That's a good claim to fame right there.
They've also signed Birigidi from the Newcastle Jets, which I thought was quite an interesting one.
Yes, if Fabianski ended up having a very good season last season, but if he gets injured, maybe they've got to call on Birigidi to try and save a few goals. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But no, look, I think Llorente is an interesting player. He was very good a few seasons ago. He's obviously moved around a bit. He's 31 now, and only scored 4 goals for Sevilla last season. So, Swansea are relying on him to score 15 goals to keep him up. I think that's a bit optimistic. So, I think they definitely need some more players for strikers and attacking midfielders. But at the moment, I've got them coming 18th. I think this might be the season they actually get relegated.
And then obviously they were subject of a takeover from an American group over the summer. And from what I've seen, their supporters aren't actually too happy about that because it's sort of taken away their charm, I suppose, because now they're just sort of seen as this, just yet another corporate club, I guess. We were talking actually off air just before the podcast about a few of the clubs undergoing takeovers, and we'll chat about West Brom in a second. But what does that takeover mean for Swansea, do you think? Do you see that as sort of a positive step for them, or obviously at the moment with the lack of investment, it might not actually bode that well for them?
It's interesting because at the moment it seems every new owner in the Premier League is either American or Chinese at the moment. So now the two guys who have bought them, Levian and Kaplan, they actually own a bit of the Memphis Grizzlies in the NBA as well. Right. So at least they do have some experience when it comes to, owning a franchise and that, I suppose. But, Americans in the Premier League have been a real mixed bag. You've got the horror stories of, Hicks and Gillett at Liverpool, back in 2010. You look at Randy Lerner at Aston Villa, put a lot of money in the early days and then, pulled all his money out, basically. And obviously you look at Villa now, they ended up getting relegated. So, I think it really depends on, one, how much money they're willing to sink into the club, and, two, whether they're willing to continue doing that over the long term or not. So, I don't think there's a huge change at the moment, but, Swansea struggle to start the season. People are going to look at the new owners and obviously put 2 and 2 together and complain about them.
Another club that might struggle this season in their second season in the Premier League is Bournemouth, and we're going to have a quick chat about them as well. They've obviously been quite active in the transfer market so far, with spending quite a lot of money on guys like Jordan Ibe and Smith, also from Liverpool, and then I think they got Cook from Leeds, who I think is a left back, or it might be a right. He's a defender, I think.
He's central midfielder, I think.
There you go. Completely off.
He's a footy manager, special Lewis Cook. So
there you go. Yeah. So they've been quite active, and obviously sold Ritchie to Newcastle for 12 million, which kind of helps recoup a lot of that. But how do you see those signings fitting into the side?
Yeah, they're an interesting team, Bournemouth. It's always been Eddie Howe's mantra to sign good young English players, and obviously, as you said, they've brought in Cook and Ibe and Brad Smith. They've got Nathan Ake on loan as well. He was at Watford last season playing as a left back, although I think he wants to be played as a midfielder this season. They still rely a lot on the likes of Harry Arter, Charlie Daniels, Andrew Sermon. Those players have been around the club for a few seasons, in their mid-20s now. So, I think defensively they don't look very good on paper. I think they've only got two centre-backs in their squad at the moment, in Steve Cook and Simon Francis, because Tommy Elphick has gone to Aston Villa now. So I think they definitely need to bring in at least one, if not 2, central defenders to upgrade there. I think, and Arda Boric as well. He's in goal. He's quite inconsistent. I think it's fair to say he can, save 10 shots one game and then concede 4 goals the next. So
yeah, I was interested to see that they re-signed. Was it both Boric and also Federici to new deals, or at least they're retaining both of them, which I found quite interesting after the seasons they had.
Yeah, no, they have. So I thought they might go for an upgrade in their goalkeeper position, but they haven't, which is quite interesting. So in terms of their survival, I think they're going to have to score a lot of goals again. So I think Callum Wilson is going to be really important to him. He did his ACL, I think, in the third or fourth game last season and came back and scored a few goals. But he's the type of player who, if he's at his best, he can score 10, 15 goals in the Premier League. And he's had the likes of West Ham and Tottenham being linked with him for a possible transfer as well. So if he does well, I could see him moving on to a bigger club. They've obviously got Benik Afobe as well, who they bought from Wolves for £10 million last off-season. So I think he scored 3 in his first 4 games for him, but then didn't do much after that. So they're going to need him to play very well. And they got Max Gradel on the wing as well. So, look, I reckon they're a team that are probably going to have a second season syndrome. They could struggle a little bit, but I think they've got enough quality sort of out wide and in their strike force that I think they'll score enough goals to just stay up, I think.
And then, obviously, with Hodgson leaving England after the Euros, there was a lot of speculation about Eddie Howe being a future England manager. And the general thought is perhaps that after the World Cup, Allardyce will step down and Eddie Howe could take over after he's had a bit more time to cut his teeth in the Premier League. Do you see that as being a chance? Do you think Howe is sort of that long-term solution for England?
He could be, but I think he's got to move Bournemouth into a mid-table sort of top half team for that to happen. Even Sam Allardyce, people thought he was never going to get the England job. He didn't really do that well at West Ham, I thought, and then he goes to Sunderland and keeps them up, and all of a sudden he's flavour of the month and he ends up getting the England job. So, really it's all about, if that job becomes available, it's pretty much, well, who's done the best in the last 9 to 12 months. I think his style of play definitely fits in with what England are going to want over the long term. So, I think Fat Sam's probably a short-term solution to the World Cup, built the squad morale back up a little bit, try to get him into a quarterfinal or something maybe, but I don't see him as a long-term solution. But whether, the FA are willing to offer Howe the job if he stays at Bournemouth or whether they want him to move to a bigger club and sink his teeth into, say, into a Southampton or one of those sorts of teams first.
Well, just on the England job, I should probably ask you, as you've probably got a bit more knowledge of Allardyce than most, having had him as your manager, do you think he can be a success for England, even just in the short term?
I think he can. I'd be very curious to see what style of play and formation he goes for. When he was at West Ham, he built his team around Andy Carroll and just sending in long balls out wide. And he goes to Sunderland and he's got Jermaine Defoe as a lone striker. And so, England's, the players that England have, and especially their strikers, you've got the likes of Vardy and Kane up front, and they have a lot of sort of pacey players. So, is Fat Sam going to be able to play long ball football for England? I think if he tries that his first couple of games, the press are going to be all over him. And it could be a very short honeymoon. So. But I think, he's the type of manager who sort of galvanises his players a fair bit. And I think they sort of need that at the moment. You look at like Raheem Sterling, who did absolutely nothing at the Euros. And in England, they have that syndrome where, you build up a player as soon as he has a good game at 18 or 19 years old. And they're sort of going through that with Marcus Rashford a bit at the moment. So, I'll be very curious to see, will Fat Sam even play Rashford at the moment, or is he going to, stick with experienced players?
And then a couple of sides that have been known for Route 1 football at various times. We'll talk about West Brom and Stoke quickly to round things out. We'll start with West Brom, and obviously the news in the last day or so that they're going to be taken over by a Chinese group. Do we see that as maybe spelling the end for Pulis in the medium term? Because obviously, when these sorts of new owners come in, they might want to shape the club in their own way and look at Pulis and his unattractive brand of football and see that they can progress beyond it.
Absolutely, I do. You look at Wolves as an example. They just got taken over a couple of weeks ago by a Chinese group, and they said Kenny Jackett's job was safe, and then 3 days later he gets sacked and Walter Zenga comes in. So, I think it's all well and good to say, Pulis is a good manager, he's mid-table and he's safe and all that, but especially with a new owner comes in, it's like a shiny new toy for him, and he's going to want to put his own people, in charge and all that. And if he comes to West Brom and he sees a West Brom game, how bored is he going to be watching Route 1 football and watching 4 centre backs in defence? It's I would hate to be a West Brom supporter. It would be, wasting £700 to £800 a year having to watch this type of football they play. So
it's interesting though. I mean, I know when we were fighting against relegation 2 seasons ago, and that was around the time when Pulis was out of management, and West Brom were also in the same boat as us, and it was sort of that discussion of, well, do you take Premier League safety but sacrifice that style? And to be honest, I think short-term to medium-term, I would take it because, that sort of stability that he can bring and actually secure that Premier League football then allows somebody to come in and take that next step, which you can see Stoke have done, and we'll talk about them in a second. But for West Brom, maybe they're approaching that point where they've now kind of secured Premier League football and built that squad enough. Like they've got players like Rondon, Berahino, if he sticks around, who can actually provide that bit of quality in the side, that a more flair-based manager might be able to actually progress the club to the next stage.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Although I think, West Brom have been up in the Premier League for a few seasons now, and, the new owners have said they want to take them into a consistent top half, which I think spells death for Tony Pulis, basically.
It's going to be ridiculous, though, because, I mean, almost every club in the Premier League, it's going to get to a point where the 3 promoted clubs just stand no chance unless they're Wolves owned by a Chinese group as well, where every club would basically have top half ambitions, which is just going to get to... It'll be an incredibly entertaining spectacle for supporters watching clubs try and be competitive week in, week out. But I think it could spell the end of managers quite quickly if clubs are struggling and they're not meeting the expectations of these owners.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I think if you look at everyone's predictions for the table for the season ahead, everyone's top 9 teams are pretty much the same. You'd have Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United, Man City, West Ham, Everton, Leicester, Spurs, and Everton. So, pretty much everyone thinks those are going to be your top 9 this season. So you've got 11 other clubs fighting it out for 10th, potentially. So... it's all well and good to say, I want to turn a West Brom into a consistent top 10 team, but, that's not something that happens overnight as well. It takes a few seasons to actually build all the groundwork and sign the right players. And, West Brom is just not the most attractive football team to move to right
at the
now.
moment, sure, yeah. And you just have to look at in a couple of years what Stoke managed to do. And we'll talk about Stoke now and the fact that they have year on year been able to bring in these sort of flair players in guys like Bojan, Shaqiri, guys like that, who've managed to transform them from that sort of pureless Route 1 style football into a much more attractive side. And I guess all that they're really missing is that top line striker to spearhead the side. Really, do you see them signing that sort of striker, or do we think they've even been in the market for one at this stage?
I think they're pretty keen on Berahino at the moment. So, although with Diafra Sakho's move falling over to West Brom, West Brom might want to hold on to Berahino for a while longer at the moment until they bring in a replacement. So, I haven't really seen Stoke linked to any other strikers. I think they've got Diouf, Gisello, and Peter Crouch. Who are good sort of target man strikers, but they're not going to score you, 15 goals a season. So they definitely do need an upgrade there. I'm actually a bit pessimistic on Stoke compared to other people. Their second half of the season last season was pretty average, I thought, especially after Jack Butland got injured. He was out for 3 months, and I think up until then, he had the most saves out of any goalie in the Premier League last season. And once he got injured, they were conceding two to 3 goals on average after that. So he's very important for him. But I remember that we played them in the last game of the season, and Imbula was the only player who looked half decent in that game. So, they've kept the Nautovic, which is very important. I think he's just re-signed on a 4-year contract. But no, I just think, Stoke have been around, the 8th, 9th position for a while now, but I think other teams below them have, and I think Everton's a good example. I see Everton passing Stoke this season, for instance. I think Stoke have just treaded water a little bit, and even though they might not be worse than what they were previously, I think other teams have done better. So I have Stoke down in about 12th or 13th for the upcoming season.
Yeah, it'd be interesting as supporters of those sorts of clubs. I mean, I haven't really been in that position of you're 90% confident that you're not going to get relegated, for, barring an absolute disaster. But you're also not really pushing for a top 6, top 4 position. So it's a bit interesting to see what your ambitions end up being for the season. But I mean, in our talks just then about West Brom and pushing for that top 10 regular finish, obviously if they want to push for a regular finish in the top 10, the side's got to slide out. And we're seeing Swansea sort of slide down the table after being quite good a few seasons ago, and perhaps signs of that for Stoke if they can't find some sort of consistency, as you say. I do find it interesting with those sorts of sides when they're obviously, like, they've secured safety halfway through the season and you can just see them switch off. And we used to see it a bit with Southampton and Newcastle and obviously Stoke last season. But then they don't seem to focus on going on a cup run, which would have made more sense to me. If you're safe, if you're not going to get relegated, if you're not going to care in league games, why not go for a cup run?
No, absolutely. And then I think, when you've got nothing to play for in the last 2 months of the season, it's very obvious with the players. Even West Ham were a good example of that a couple of seasons ago, where we played Newcastle in the final game of the season and Newcastle had to win to stay up. And our players, like they'd been on holiday for weeks prior. So
I remember that game well.
Yeah, something about Newcastle. Whenever we played away at them, we've always been horrible. So, as much as bad as it is for NUFC Tiger, and they didn't have a good start to the season this morning against Fulham. I'm a little bit glad for selfish reasons that Newcastle aren't in the Premier League this season, because that's usually a bank 3 points for them.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see how the season pans out. But thank you very much for joining me for this chat this morning, and hopefully I'll catch up with Wilson, Raider, and Cruyff soon to fill in the Spurs and Arsenal segments for this one.
Sounds good, and thanks for having me on the potty, and probably chat to you again at some stage.
No worries. I'll catch you next time.
All right.